Hello everybody and welcome back to Deansbury Town. In this video I'm going to be progressing further with the back scene of the layout, but before we get into the video I'd just like to say a massive thank you to everyone who's taken the time to watch the videos and subscribe to the channel. I'm absolutely blown away by the fact I've got over 300 subscribers now, which I think is incredible, so thank you everyone for watching. I hope you do continue to enjoy the videos, and if you haven't subscribed please do so. It's entirely free, doesn't cost you a penny, and just helps promote the channel within YouTube. Apologies for the delay in getting this video out. It has taken quite a bit longer than I thought, and so I've split this down into two parts, this being the first one, the second one will follow. So I hope you enjoy this video. This is the next one in the Backscenes series, so I will detail how I've constructed this partly low relief kind of warehouse stroke pottery works building. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks very much. Before I started on this bit of the back scene, I did a very crude sketch of the entire back scene from left to right. So starting on the right hand side, this is the scene already in place in the corner behind the station. Then we've got the terrace houses, which I did in the first video. I've got a gap here which I need to put something in the background of there, but I did this just to kind of work out in my mind what was going to go where and the kind of size and style of building that I wanted to get in, which has led me to initially this sort of low height type structure here, and then some higher buildings here, but then some comments on the previous video suggested more of the back of a factory to fit in here, which then led me to consider a building the full width, so approximately 60 centimeters of that area of the layout, which when I started to measure it up and mock it up, that just ended up being too big. Took some measurements of the heights of the buildings from what I've got existing to come up with some rough heights, and that's what led me to the first kind of template here for the works building. And I've obviously halved the size of this, so this is just under 300 now. I measured this up, used this as a kind of template for a back extension, and obviously the building then needed to be a little bit bigger to accommodate that and still have a third floor of windows. So that's the kind of evolution to get where we are today. And then obviously I've done the mock-ups of the current building, and I think they fitted in quite well in the gap there, so that's kind of taking care of this left hand side, and the other buildings that I mocked up previously will form this left hand side of the scene. So I just couldn't quite work out how it was all going to fit together, and just looking at one piece at a time. This obviously will end up probably looking nothing like this, but just wanted to try and put some things into context. Here we've got the templates I've created in Inkscape for the next part of the back scene. First off, we've got just a couple of kind of pitch roof buildings there to go in the corner. We're just going to see how they look for size and kind of building massing, if you like, in the corner. And then next to those we've got what is the kind of back of a more substantial works with some windows. This is kind of an archway through from what would be the road entrance at the front, and then kind of pairs of windows. These haven't come out particularly well in this sketch because obviously some of these are windows and some of these are brickwork, and then you've got the lintels and the sills, but there'll be brickwork in between. I've left a gap here. We're going to see what the boiler house looks like here, sort of coming out the back. Here we are on the layout then. So we've got the railway works on the left hand side. The idea here is we've got a bit of a continuation of the industrial buildings, something like that, maybe a little bit lower with the backs cut off. That one disappeared, this one disappears. Put the boiler house out of the way for a minute. And then the idea here is that this workshop building is actually a bit bigger than we had previously. actually a part building of some description, possibly. That's a bit of an angle, so we've got it deeper on the right hand side. That's about that deep, and then tapering down to a centimetre or so on the left hand side. Just creates a bit of a difference, obviously makes the roof line a little bit more difficult to work out. We'll still have the engine shed here because I'm still keen to keep a little bit of a depot. It's not terribly realistic, but my idea now is to use this Backscenes boiler house, possibly reclad in a different colour, maybe, we'll see, because I'm quite keen to have the warehouse this warehouse in a darker brick colour, similar to the works. Although this might work weathered down, we'll see. Then instead of the boiler house being located kind of in no man's land back here, the idea I had actually to have the boiler house as part of the back of the works there, probably with that end face taken off so it's integrated into the works. And then just continue the wall down here so it's depot side and a factory side in the spare land that was available next to the depot. So I think I quite like that. I might make the warehouse a little bit taller, just to give it a bit more presence. I think that's what shows the value of doing these mock-ups, but I quite like the idea that it's not totally square to the back, just brings it out a little bit. Need to work out how this side's going to go. Maybe take this wall out or just cut that in at an angle, because in many old towns the buildings weren't particularly square, they just fitted into the land as was available. So the idea that this has been squeezed into whatever land was free that the railways left over, I think is what I'm trying to convey. So having test fitted the main back wall of the warehouse on the layout, I've used these dimensions to create a number of overlays in Inkscape. So we've got a centre wall piece here with the window to be cut out. We've also got the side walls and the end walls here, and then a number of other pieces to form the inside of the front walls, floors, roof, window sills, and then a back wall which you'll be able to glimpse through the windows. Before we move on, it's probably worth saying I've deliberately chosen not to show you any of my workings in Inkscape. There's a couple of good reasons for this. Firstly, I'm not very good at it. Secondly, my laptop is terribly slow and freezes up all the time. And thirdly, you're far better off checking more qualified people out than I am. I can certainly recommend Charndwell Engage Layout on YouTube. It's got some excellent Inkscape tutorials. So I'm going to give those a little bit of a test fit now before we start cutting them out, just to make sure the everything lines up. Take the masking tape off. On the right hand side, unfortunately, there's been a bit of misalignment here, but what I've done, I've taken a strip of brick paper off the right hand side wrap that goes around the back, and this is actually going to be covered by a bit of downpipe anyway to hide the joins, but what I'm going to do is just hang on to this tiny strip of brick, paint the ends in a darker brown anyway, and I'm just going to glue that over the top there to hide the white, and I think by the time the gutter's over the top of that it'll barely be noticed, but anyway, so we'll hang on to that. So I'm just going to wrap these up. The way I tend to do the windows to get the the frames nice and crisp is use a reasonably blunt but quite a fine tipped kind of Bradle scoring pen, and just a couple of light passes along each of the uprights. This gives the paper a nice score and allows it to have a nice crisp fold as you fold up the edges. Adds a little bit of time in. I think it makes the end result reasonably worthwhile. And then before you glue, fold all of these up once. The little ones can be a bit fiddly. And then another pre-fold on the inside. Obviously this one is quite tricky to do with any kind of tool, so just with your fingers is good enough just to give the paper that first crease. Fold all these around. The doors are exactly the same, and then I tend to do 1 or 2 windows at a time, just a line of PVA inside and one on the return. And because this is the back, it doesn't have to be too neat, but I tend to use a wooden block or something, and then first pass, get your fingers in there, and then a nice firm press with the block. And because this is at the back, you can use this to kind of push, stretch the paper out a little bit. Gives a nice crisp finish, and then final touch. Let's get the scorer again and just run that upwards a couple of times just to burnish the edges, and that should give you a nice crisp finish. You might find a little bit of glue squeezes out the top. That's okay. Over with a bit of varnish. That's what I do for all the openings, so I'll carry on and finish those off. Next up, we've got window sills to cut out and put in place under the each of the windows, and a couple of little ones for the windows here. The reason these 3 windows here don't have a lintel at the top is I'm planning on putting a kind of a full length lintel across the whole of the building, just to give it a bit more of a bit of a feature, a bit of an architectural feature there, just to break it up a little bit. So that's going to be cut out and put onto a piece of cardboard, and that will give a sort of continuous lintel here. Then on the main centre building, you can see we've got a couple of outlines here. That is going to be the works sign, so that gives me a placeholder for that. And this is the outline of what will be the kind of the boiler house, effectively this kind of shape here, which will abut onto this building here. It's not exactly that big, so you'll still be able to see the windows, but that's effectively what that's going to be there. Okay, we get the windowsills cut out. That's all the windowsills cut out and stuck on. If you're interested in how I do this, then there should be a link coming up now to my previous video on Backscenes. All the techniques are pretty much the same, but the building design is obviously different in this video. So there we go, that's all the windowsills done. So that's the overall size and scale of the warehouse. Next up, we've got the right end wall and the left end wall, which need covering in the brick paper. And then what I've also done is mount the back wall inside on some thick card, and the inside of the front wall on some thick card. That will sit on the back of the walls, front walls here. Obviously all the windows will be cut out, and that will just give it some structural rigidity. So we're going to get all those bits cut out next and start putting the structure together. The back side of the front wall's now had all the window apertures cut out, and I've been round the inside with some white paint. This is a bit of a shortcut to create the kind of whitewash brickwork effect on the inside. So it's wrapping this in anything that's going to be seen. The idea behind this is this and the other one form the inside of the front wall, and then the front base layers are glued over the front, and the difference in join gives the front a lot more rigidity rather than having the join in the same place. I've started gluing up the first one of these, so this is the left hand side of the building. That's clamped and gluing now, and then once that's dry I'll be able to put the middle piece onto these two and get that clamped up. So they're the next steps. In the meantime, I've also got all the window sills on, and I've glued all of the window panes in to the factory building there, so coming along quite nicely. The left hand side is now securely glued to the back, so we've got a nice big overlap here to which we are going to glue the centre part of the front. So I'm going to get that glued up there now, and the windows seem to align quite well, and this gap here is going to be covered by the downpipe. The most important thing is we get this nice and flat clamp, so I'm going to get a load of glue spread over that and we'll get it clamped up. Okay, the next thing to do now we've got the front all complete, nice and reasonably flat, is to attach the two end walls onto the building. What I'm going to be using here is a couple of these scale model scenery 90-degree jigs and a few clamps, and hopefully this will keep things as kind of square as we possibly can get them. So we're going to pop a clamp on this end here. Hopefully that means that one's upright. Nice and tight in this corner here. I can't put any, I might be able to get a clamp through the doorway. I'll try. I'll go through that door. Yeah, that's worked out okay. And then the idea is I've got a rebate here in the side of the inner face of the wall, and this should just slot in there, and then a clamp there, and I'm going to have to hold this bit with my fingers. I could do with some of those 90-degree clamps to go in there really, but I don't have any of those, so it's going to have to go like that. Joins go, that's come out pretty well. And do the same for this side. I've got the inner floors now covered. I've just painted the undersides of them sort of an off-white to give the impression of the ceiling for seeing underneath. I don't think you're going to see that a huge amount. You have to be very low level to do that. The idea with the floors is they go roughly along the yellow lines, glued in there, and obviously to the side walls. The back wall is supposed to sit inside this wall here, so I'm going to need to trim a little bit off of these floors here to accommodate that back panel. So I'm going to mark that up now and work out how much we need to take off. So the ceilings have now been trimmed. I've got a couple of extra packing pieces here just to help get everything to stick. So I'm going to get cracking with the glue in here. So the main structure of the factory building is now complete, so it's on to the details. At this point I'd printed out a couple of different colours of the signs for the building and started to cut them out, and then really kind of descended into madness really here, as I decided it would be a good idea to cut out individual letters from some of the spare signs I had, paint them up white and stick them on the background to create a kind of 3D effect for the sign. I think at this point it's probably best to stop this video here, and then we'll pick up the rest of the sign and the installation of the lights, the roof and the boiler house in the next video. I hope this video has been of interest and you've picked up a few tips. If you do like what you've seen, there's a couple of links popping up on the screen now to my previous videos. Please do consider leaving a like, a comment and subscribing to the channel. I'll see you in a future video. Bye for now.